Delilah stared blankly at her untouched pancakes, her hand trembling around the coffee mug. The sunlight felt too harsh. I reached for her hand but she pulled away. Our waitress, Selina, noticed. She returned minutes later, not with food, but with 2 Lionello shots. "It's on the house," she whispered. Delilah's lips quivered, but she downed hers. I followed. That single gesture from a stranger cracked the silence. Delilah whispered. She saw me. It was the first thing she'd said all morning. Delilah looked at Selina as if clinging to a life raft. "Do you always give out free shots?" she asked, voice thin. Selina smiled gently. "Only when it matters." Delilah blinked, the weight in her chest visibly shifting. I hadn't seen her like this since before the funeral. Selina knelt beside our table, resting a hand on Delilah's. "You're not alone, okay?" That moment stitched something small but vital back together. Delilah nodded slowly, and for a second, breathed easier. 3 days later. Delilah collapsed into the booth like her bones weighed double. "I didn't sleep," she muttered. Selina brought water before we even asked. "You don't look like yourself," she said softly. Delilah flinched. "Who am I now?" The Lionello shots arrived again unsaid, unrequested. Delilah stared at them, then finally whispered, "I don't want to be a ghost anymore." The next visit, Delilah was quiet until Selina asked, "Still seeing him in your dreams?" Her hand froze on her fork. "Yes," she breathed. "He blames me." Jonah reached across the table, gripping her hand tight. "You kept him alive longer than he ever admitted." Tears welled. "The shots came late this time." "Drink," Selina said, "not to forget, to forgive." Delilah nodded, shakily raising her glass. That evening, Delilah left the table mid-meal. I found her crying outside. "He called the night before," she whispered. I didn't answer. Guilt etched every word. Selina appeared holding her phone. "Want to send him something anyway?" she asked. Confused, Delilah looked up. Selina explained, "A message in a balloon. We do that sometimes." It was silly. But Delilah nodded. "Okay, I need to try." The next day, we returned with a note Delilah had written. Selina handed her a blue balloon. Delilah tied it on, fingers shaking, and released it into the wind. "Goodbye, Sam," she whispered. Jonah wrapped his arms around her. She didn't cry this time. Selina wiped a tear from her own cheek. "That was brave." Delilah exhaled, voice steadier. "It finally feels like goodbye." Weeks passed, and Delilah started smiling again, real, unguarded smiles. We always sat in Selina's section. One evening, Delilah brought her a Lionello shot. "For you," she said. Selina laughed, touched. "That's a first." In that moment, Delilah wasn't the grieving sister. She was a woman healing, paying forward the kindness that saved her. On the anniversary of Sam's passing, we returned. Delilah placed a framed photo on the table. "He loved pasta," she said softly. Selina brought 2 Lionello shots, no words needed. Delilah raised hers to surviving. She toasted. Jonah and Selina joined in. That night, grief felt less like a storm, and more like a tide.